Ladies and gentlemen, Cherrywood Coffee House presents the famous, just back from an international tour to England, Michael Kelly Tom Woodruff, world poet.
The tables and chairs are really good listeners because they haven't got a leg to stand upon. I'm here to tell you I have changed. I'm no longer the cocaine, heroin, adrenaline junkie that you thought I was once upon a crime. But no, this is the new one. This is the second-hand one. This is the way things change when you don't see the changes are not just incremental, it is accruing at all times. So I am loose change, you know, the change that comes. Well, my friend, he lives in the forest, and he comes up to me in London. He says, "Would anyone help me? I go to the bank and I want to change my euros into pounds, but the bank wants to take 40% of the exchange rate rather than just do it on the normal exchange rate." And I said, "Sure, I've just been paid. Here's £100. Give me what you want in euros." So he gives me 130 euros, and I realised then that euros are not acceptable currency in old England. But I don't care. That's right. This is why I'm telling you the story. Now, I've experienced this before. If ever you've done a show in Scotland, you realise that they pay you in Scottish money. But Scottish money is no good in England because they're Angles, Saxons and Jutes. It's all the normal invasion. So I realised then that they're not going to get, the Scots going to have their currency, but the euros, they've just left the EC, which is the craziest thing to do. When you've got a tunnel going under the English Channel, and you've got a channel going there, and you've got trains going at all times between London and Paris, and you've got buses going between the two, why would you cut that little road and rail link? Crazy people. But it wasn't them. It was the Tories. Everything is the Tories. Because the Tories are the sort of self-opinionated royalty of a land that is class conscious. Now here, we haven't got class, we've just got education, outdoor education, community education. There, they've got a royal system, which is now, of course, like Women's Weekly, Oprah Winfrey. It's got all the soap opera dealings that you can actually watch on television because the real life is not worthwhile watching. So, I mean, the coronation, what a joke. I mean, the News of the World and the Daily Mirror published the hidden signals between Prince Charles, as he was then, and Camilla. And what he said was, "I'd like to be your bicycle seat." And they realised that, hey, this guy's the King of England, right? He is now, okay? And I used to like him in the 60s when he was with the Goon Show, and he was with a whole heap of people. Now, the closest I've got, I did the Royal Cornwall Show, which is the biggest show in Cornwall, with a Ceilidh band, and that was a place where he used to come, Prince Charles and Camilla, before he became King of England. And it's an amazing thing. It's sort of like South by Southwest on steroids. It covers whole acres and valleys of agricultural implements, and there's a little bus that takes you around the site, and it takes an hour to get around the site. Okay, and that's going through all these walking people and stalls and people selling their heritage and selling their bodies, whatever it might be at the time. But this Ceilidh band was interesting because, you know, it was a fiddler, of course, a hand drummer, of course, and a guitarist, of course. Now, I jammed with Chris Bevington from Cornwall before, and that was in another world, in another time, when bands like Gong, the Invisible Opera Company of Tibet, Kangaroo Moon, were my reason for living, because they were the ones that I did, I was laughingly called the Glastonbury Festival about 20, 30 years ago. And I thought to myself, hey, nothing's changed. I'm going back to Glastonbury. I'm going to do the festival. And my friend said, hey, Tom, we can't get in. We can't even get our band members in. And we live in Pilton. Now, you understand, Glastonbury is a bit like Woodstock. Woodstock did not happen at Woodstock. I've done poetry in Woodstock, but Woodstock is a beautiful little one-lane village full of art galleries. It's got a peace pole. It's the most beautiful little site. Bob Dylan used to live there, and the band. They have the pink house still there that the band lived in, and they have photographs of Big Brother and and Dylan, all those people, all around the whole village. But the actual Woodstock thing happened on Yaska's farm, which is about 19 miles away, because it was too big. When I first landed in Woodstock, the guy took me, I'm saying this, I have a friend called Benny Zabel, who is an artist in Australia, who was the first guy to do murals in this little country town we took over called Nimbin, way back in the 70s. He painted murals all over there, and they brought him back 20 years later to repaint the murals because the town had got sort of jaded from marijuana to heroin, and they wanted to up-vibe it with the original colours. So Benny had asked me to come, so I came to Woodstock, and the first day there, Nathan Koenig, what bless his soul, said, now he's the guy who runs the Woodstock Museum. So if ever you go to Woodstock, go to the Woodstock Museum, because it's got all the information about the Woodstock Festival and all the things about the people that were really there. And it's like a beautiful, open-hearted house. Because I wasn't the only one there. But they had a film festival about things like the nuclear reactor that's going to blow up near New York pretty soon. And people don't know about, they don't want to know about, because radiation is forever. Love might not last. But anyway, Nathan, he invited me out that night to there's no word for it, it's not shindig, it's not potluck, it's not a concert, it's an event in people's houses whereby the musicians play for free, that's all the village musicians. They have a table groaning with food and drink that everybody brings, and any money that people throw in goes to the band, right? And I did poetry there, and it was just such a good feeling, because it was the original feeling that prompted the Woodstock Festival many, many years ago. Not Woodstock 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like Terminator or Fast and Furious. This was the original vision. Now the guy who had it, he was always a bit of a guy, but people said, well, it's a good idea, but Woodstock is too small, we can't do it here, let's find somewhere else, Yaska's farm. Same thing, it was my friends in the band called Gong, who were at the first Glastonbury Festival in 1972 on the Pyramid stage, which has now been beatified as a permanent structure in the middle of Pilton, which is 60 miles away from beautiful Glastonbury. And he's gone. David Allen is now up with the Ascended Masters looking down on us laughing. But the bands I worked with years and years ago were Kangaroo Moon. They're an Australian Celtic band that start off with jigs and reels so people start dancing, and then they start improvising, and they go really, really good, because people are tripping by this stage and they take them up into the celestial heights. And I was with them at a rave in Leeds, in this abandoned factory. I was in the chill out area, and I was dressed, of course, in absolute glowing yellow, and everyone was there holding their evening bottles, tripping out their mushroom minds, and they said, you on drugs? I said, no, you're on drugs, catch up. And they looked at me like they were away from it all, but they were. So that was a good experience. And Kangaroo Moon, the singer, Mark Robson, has a birthday just before mine, Gemini time, Red Traveller. Nice. And he's a really nice guy, but he's found this woman who is absolutely amazing, because she can manifest money. And he has become very much quieter the more power she has. So she went and bought things and owned things, controlled, dominated, possessed things. And he's a non-materialist. I mean, we got a gig in Hebden Bridge, which is the sort of like tiny little trade union town in Yorkshire, which is a beautiful little town itself, in the trades hall, and they got one room for the band. So I slept on the floor, and the others slept everywhere else, because that was the spirit of the band, you know? Whatever you got, if it's nothing, share it. The other band was the Invisible Opera Company of Tibet, which is great if you can see them, because there's nothing else like them. And I said to Jackie Juno, now Jackie is a witch, and she lived on Dartmoor, what do you call, moor, for a year in a little cave there, in a tent actually. And Dartmoor is chill, cold, cool. And she did that, and she said to me, well, Tom, you know, I'm in there because I can do tarot and astrology. That's what they seem to want. But I can only get myself in. Can't get you in. Good luck, good luck. So that's 2 down. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to my friends in Street. Now, Street is the normal part of Glastonbury. Like you have Glastonbury, which is a one-lane, like Woodstock, a one-lane village, which is an open-air lunatic asylum. It has, inside the church on the left, is the Holy Thorn Tree, which is an offshoot of the original, which according to legend, and everything is legends around there, right? The legends are that the body of Arthur and Guinevere is buried in Glastonbury Abbey, which of course was destroyed by King Henry VIII during the dissolution of the monarchies. He wanted their wealth. And the people of Glastonbury, being very canny people, when the monastery was knocked down, they took all the stones and built their houses out of them. So you'll see parts of Glastonbury having all around the old stone houses there. But the reason I love it, you may have read The Mists of Avalon, Marion Zimmer Bradley. Okay, well, Marion Zimmer Bradley came to Glastonbury, had a little cottage at the bottom of the Tor. You know what the Tor is, don't you? Okay, it's a little hill, and it's the entrance to the Celtic underworld. From on high, it looks like a vagina looking down 7 folds, and you walk around it 7 times, and that way they say you can attune yourself to the underground, the underworld. Now, I couldn't walk around 7 times.
What? How big is it?
How big is it? It's sort of like maybe 200 feet tall.
But I mean, how far did you have to walk if you can't walk around it 7 times?
Like Uluru, you've got to walk around Uluru.
Yeah, but I mean, is it a mile around or
Maybe.
Oh, it's that big.
Yeah.
So 7 miles you'd have had to walk.
If you're coming in by bus from Bristol to Glastonbury, and you look in the morning, early morning, you'll see what's called the Mists of Avalon. Because Avalon is in a bog plain, and in that bog, it's ancient. It goes back to the story of Jesus coming with Joseph of Arimathea, whose tomb he borrowed when he was resurrected 3 days later. And Joseph of Arimathea, according to legend, on Weary All Hill, struck his staff into the ground, and that staff bloomed into the thorn tree, which only bloomed at Easter and at Christmas. Even though those dates change, that's the only time it blooms. And then there's no thorn trees in England. It's from the Middle East. And of course, like they did to the Texas treaty oak, it was vandalized on Weary All Hill. So what happened was, they had a grafting of it, and they planted it inside the churchyard, which is, got a fence around it, of course. And that thorn tree still exists after so many years. And the whole of Glastonbury is full of legends and myths like that. And the one thing my whole soul is attuned to is the Chalice Well. It's a place where for 600 or 700 years people have come to drink from the waters for healing. But the magic part is this: there are 2 types of waters coming from one source. There is the iron-rich waters of the Chalice Well, and the calcium-rich waters of the White Well. That's on the other side of the street. Now, this time, of course, I actually drank from there, and what I find by another poet, Brett Travel, there was a poet by the Chalice Well selling his poetry. I said, "Why are you selling poetry?" He said, "I've got to eat, man." I said, Here's free poetry. You sell this and start eating." It confused him beautifully, because he needs to eat, we all need to eat, but poetry is beyond food. It's food for thought, soul, and all the rest of it.
But when did this happen?
This happened about 5 weeks ago.
Oh.
During June. That's when I was Gemini time. So I had to go back to thank all the people who were kind to me when I had been doing tours through the Blessed Isles, as they call them. So Glastonbury was always a place I went to, and the Tor used to be a place I'd go to the top of. We meditated beside it. We sat there and looked out at Somerset, because it's the highest point in the Somerset area. And Somerset itself is famous for cider and apples. It's also called the Apple Isle. Avalon is called the Apple Isle, and it is Avalon. And you see the River Brue, where, according to legend, King Arthur threw the sword into the Lady of the Lake, and she grabbed it, right? Well, that is just a little river. It's just a tiny place, the River Brue, legendary River Brue. Chuck the sword in there. Well, the Brue is still there, and all the area is sort of soaked up in the myths of the mythology, the myths of Avalon. But I like the parts like the water. So what I did, I bought some Chalice Well water home, and I mixed the one from the well itself and the Whitewater Well. because they're different types of water. They're both healing waters. I mean, people have rolled around those waters for centuries, and they will always, because those in the know that water is always sacred, no matter where it is. They call it holy water for churches, but before they blessed it, it really was. Like, for instance, that hill was famous as a place of pilgrimage, as the entrance to the Celtic underworld. And then the Christians came and they put a little tower on top of it called St. Michael's Tower. Now the thing is that...
On top of the Tour?
On top of the Tour.
Whoa.
Tour is Welsh for hill.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what happened is lightning struck it, of course.
Ah.
So the Tour is a hollow shell. But on the side of it, and this is the story, you can see a couple of images that are carved in stone. And one is of a woman milking a cow. If you think about your mythology, that goes back to the Egyptian Hathor, who was the goddess of cows and fertility. And of course, Hathor became translated into Bridget, which became Christianized as Bridget. And there is a chapel, which is, it's very kind, thank you. There's a chapel in the High Street dedicated to Bridget. And it's a secret little place that you've got to know about before you get there. Because what else is there but secrets, myths and mysteries? One of my favourite points of pilgrimage, apart from the water, is a place called Burns the Bread. I just love the pun. Imagine having a bakery called Burns the Bread. And it's there. And they have Cornish pasties, which are to live for. They are magical. Good stuff. So I'm down the street talking with my friend Johnny Green. And we haven't seen each other since 2006, where I was the host of a thing called the Uncon in Amsterdam.
Uncon?
Yeah, you know how conventions? This is an unconvention.
Mm.
Okay? So what it was, the band I work with, a gong, has parts of it all around the world. There's Mother Gong, the eco-feminist band I work with from Australia. There's the Visual Opera Company of Tibet, and there's bands in Brazil of the gong tradition. And even though David Allen and Gilly Smythe, who were the progenitors of gong in the 1960s and 70s, of which a couple of stories you may be interested in, they were around. I think Gilly slept with Jimi Hendrix, but definitely it's true that David Allen borrowed Jimmy's guitar and then smashed it.
No!
Because it's a left-handed guitar. He couldn't play it. So Jimmy said, it's cool. It's cool, man. And when he's going into the restroom, which are called toilets in England, there's John Lennon, and he's stripping. David's stripping. And John realised this and said, maintain your trim. Maintain your trim. It's all true. Anyway, those are the literary times that I affiliate to because I really like people who are themselves, whatever the world may try to make it into something else. And Johnny Green. Johnny Green was a person who, for years and years, kept those bands alive. You may not have heard of Steve Hillage. Have you ever heard of Steve Hillage? Famous for Elle and Green and Fish Rising, three seminal 1970s records. Now, what Johnny Green recently did was put out a box set of Steve Hillage. Now, Steve Hillage is still performing, and Steve Hillage was at Glastonbury Festival about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that was how Johnny got into the festival, not as the head of GAS, Gong Appreciation Society, not as someone who kept the bands alive financially, but as the driver for Steve Hillage. That's the only way he could get that festival. Because years and years ago we jumped the fence and all things like that because it was a thing to do. It was sort of like a ligger thing to do. A ligger is someone who comes into the band room in the green room and eats all your food and drink and then goes away. Right?
Wow.
So they're liggers, they're leeches, they live off bands. And they're really powerful in Scotland. We used to know a few of them. They were hungry wolves, a lot of pups, but they still got away with things. So I'm with Johnny Green, and so we haven't met since 2006 when the Uncon was in Amsterdam. The Uncon was 2 days or 3 days of all the gong bands, Kevin Ayers, people like that, and it was magical, right? And there was DVDs and there were CDs put out of it, but that was a long time ago. And I was with them in the bus that went from London to Amsterdam, and we had conversation all the time, like we're having a conversation now, with your consenting silence. So Johnny and I, we had not met each other, and he grew a beard in the absence, right? And he lives in the street. I said that's a normal part of Glastonbury. You have Glastonbury open air lunatic asylum with magical people going up and down the street, tarot astrologers, but you can't find a plumber. And then you have street, which is like normal land. I mean, normal houses, normal people, everything normal. And it's only a mile away. One time we did a show at the Assembly Rooms. I forgot to mention, in the heart of the High Street, there is a cooperative called the Assembly Rooms. This is a hall where the bands of the area play. And it's a bit like that first party I was taken to in Woodstock. It's a bit like that because they have a lot of musicians there. They particularly have a group called Silver on the Tree, which is a choral group, an a cappella choral group of 5 women. And what's their purpose? Their purpose is to enchant King Arthur's return. You know, because King Arthur, when the Blessed Isle...
Even now in modern times?
Now in modern times. I'm trying to tell you that Glastonbury is in a time warp. I'm trying to tell you that everything that ever was...
Is it a full-time paying position?
No, everything we do is pain. Everything we do is voluntary, soul-based, truth-based. Okay? No one's going to believe the truth. That's why you have to share it as often as possible. It's a homeopathic remedy to all the delusion, illusion, and maya that persists as advertising and commercialism in this world. So, I'm there and we're talking till 2 o'clock in the morning, but I'm still hungry, so I talked to his beloved Sue. Now, Sue's a healer, and she mentioned the fact because that digestion is the essence of all health. So she and Johnny were doing exercises in digestive processes that would help them expunge all the dross that fills you up when you're not looking. I mean, of course they're ethical vegetarians. Of course they wouldn't harm a fire. And of course, since I saw them, they have a whole beautiful garden out the back and out the front. Now, I took photos of this stuff, so if you don't believe me, that doesn't matter. A photograph, people believe that. They don't believe words.
This should be a PowerPoint.
If I hear the word ought, I drive my car the other
We
way.
need a PowerPoint.
No, we don't need that. It's a story, man.
Just need ears.
No, I'm with you.
Okay. So I'm there in Glastonbury, I'm drinking the Chalice Well water, I bring some home, I've got it at home, and I'm going to give it because the only other person who knows about this is the person that does the Austin Poetry Society meeting on Zoom every Monday night, which is Cindy Heisel. You know Cindy? Rachel? You know her?
No, I
Anyway,
don't think so.
She loves women, and she got married in Glastonbury.
Wow.
Nice.
Right, so she understands the Chalice Well and the White Springs, and she understands mysticism. It's all dedicated to the god Hearn. Hearn is the deer. Like when I did the Barton Springs University, they said, "Well, how did Barton Springs happen?" And the Native Americans said, "Well, listen, it's like this. Native Americans were worried about where the water was. How would they survive without water? So what they did, they followed the deer. And the deer went down to the springs, and that's why the Native Americans always honored the deer. The same thing in the other mythology was Hearn the Hunter is a god with antlers, right? So there's altars to Hearn inside the White Well. And also because it's the apple isle, there's apples on the altar, candles burning at all times, and there's flowers. Which always makes me happy, and there's water coming out of the springs at all times. So this, I mean, ever since there was in England, those springs have continued. They've never stopped flowing. Even though England has been in drought many a time and off, the springs at Glastonbury have never stopped flowing. And so for me, it's a source of spirit, because water is spirit, same as all elements of spirit. And I go there because it just always makes me feel back in balance. Because when the world is all distraction, commercialism, and all the rest of it, you think, well, what's important? Water, we're made of it, right? I found out the other day that the water inside us is not the water that you're drinking from. The water inside us is H3O. And that H3O is also in fruit. But it's not the H2O that you drink. And that was an illumination, because I go with you Monday nights, and that was what the guy who, when I told the story there, he told me about the water, how it's different at different times. Now, you may have heard Dr. Suzuki, who did crystalline patterns of water. Well, water has different vibrations, different times, different qualities. You all know that. But it also has a crystalline structure which is astonishing and different at different times in different places. And Dr. Suzuki pointed out the fact that that's why water is a dynamic element, not a passive element. So when you have a dam, you're taking away the spirit from the water. And Native Americans do this because flowing water allows you to fish and to commune with the waters. And when you've got stagnant waters like we have in Town Lake, with all green algae everywhere, that's dead water. You don't want to be dead, so don't drink dead water. And then they have fluoride and chloride and something because you're being diluted from the essential spirit of the flowing waters. But I digress. So there in Glastonbury, gained the Charleston waters, and after that, where else had to go? Because I can't get into the festival, and I don't really want to be a consumer.
So there's no way to get into the festival?
No, because 13-foot tall fence all around the
Well, I
festival.
mean, you couldn't have paid $700 to get in.
I'm not there as a consumer, I'm there as a creator.
Oh.
I'm with my fellow friends. So that was what I experienced before, and that's what I wanted to go back to again. But the lesson I've got to constantly learn is that things are never as they were once. There's no idolizing the past, but I have to tell you the truth, these things happened, and they were magical. It's sort of like when you sit around a campfire, people sing all night. It's like this guy at the festival who made herbal tea for everybody for a week. Just sat there making herbal tea for everyone. Like this violinist in a coffee shop, he played all night for free, every night. Just magical music. These things are real. They're as real as a horrible landscape, squares and rectangles they call the Austin skyline of now. That's not real. That's a temporary construction of a particular mindset which is money-based.
Would it be real to give us a timeline of what happened when you first arrived until you took off again?
Okay. First thing I do, I land in Heathrow and I catch the train to Paddington, catch a bus. I'm with my dear Native American flute player Sandy Horton, and we go straight to my friend Richard Healy. Richard Healy had come to the Poetry Festival, and he and C. McGill are both artists. They do what's called collaborative murals. They get children inside London to draw on the walls of their school, and then they go over them in colours, so they make magical things happen. So they have made a festival for me called the Magic Forest. So I performed there for 2 days inside this gallery, which is 100% all these murals. Just imagine yourself being in a wash of colours, bright, exuberant, colourful colours. So Richard, he's also a really good singer-songwriter and a really, really fine soul. And Seema, she herself is very fine. So they've both got an exhibition happening now. So I've put it on Facebook so people can go there if they want, and I'll be invited back, and if magic happens, I'll be there. But their work is just extraordinary. So that's where I was with Sandy. Now Sandy was staying with Seema, and I was staying with Richard, and that's where I met the guy who I exchanged what money I had for his euros, which I'm going to pay you with on Thursday for coming to Molly's group. Right? Because I can't use them here, and I couldn't use them over there.
Wow.
But if you have euros, you've got to go to Europe. That's what the whole point is. But anyway, that's the first few days, right? Then Sandy and I, we go to Heathrow and mix up, wait for Wendy. Wendy comes in. We'll catch the train to Redruth, which is in Cornwall. And in Cornwall, I do about 9 shows, including the Royal Cornwall Show. I did poetry in Penzance. You ever heard of Pirates of Penzance?
Pirates of Penzance.
Yeah, Gilbert and Sullivan, right? So I did poetry in the yacht pub there, and the waves were so close to the pub, they incorporated into the poetry. It was really magical. And the woman who was hosting was just absolutely enthralled that people from another side of the globe would be there at their little pub, you know, because it's a small thing like this, a small thing, and you don't expect magical people to wing in and play Native American flutes and make things up on the spot. But everyone should expect that, because that's the magical of life. You don't know what to expect, so be open to the unexpected. Norman Mailer said that in 1965. He said, expect the unexpected, and that became the motto for Village Voice newspaper. Expect the unexpected. So I digress. We're there in Penzance. I do poetry at an eco farm where they're doing their very best to have everything organic. They're making their own clothes, they're making their own lifestyle. It's absolutely wonderful. And I go and do poetry at Nika Farm, the Royal Cornwall Show with the collecting game. Oh yeah, I was taken by the gypsies into a field, a green field, where they were practicing for the Georgian night. Georgian culture is culture of, I think, the 1890s in Cornwall. Everyone dresses up. They're all in costume. They're paraded through the town. And the people I'm staying with were, of course, musicians. And musicians, they love to celebrate. And that's what they were doing. They were turning the whole town to colours and costumes. Now, I had to leave before that happened. But I was there, as I said, to thank the people who were kind to me many years ago. And one of them was Chris Bevington, who I stayed with. And his son is now in transition to be a wonderful woman. So one of the trips we did on the way to Glastonbury, that he dropped us off in Glastonbury, and then went on to pick up his now daughter, Adeline, wonderfully bright, incredible human being, and get her away from the people in Oxford, because he's studying in Oxford, Cambridge, very, very bright, and she basically was being harassed by normal people. So Chris said, you can come and have shelter with us and recover from the scars and wounds of other people's limitations. So she was with us as we went through the Glastonbury thing, and yeah, we did another side trip, and we were supposed to do 3 in one day, because every day, I don't know if you know, but I get published in England in a thing called Gonzo Blog. It's been happening for about 12 years or so, and I never met the guy. The guy's called John Downes, and I know where he lives. He lives in a little cottage in Bideford in Devon, but I've never been there, and I've never, whatever is possible, because, so I thought to myself, look, these people, he publishes me, I've never met him, so let's go and say thank you to him. So Chris and Wendy and Sandy and I all go down to this tiny little cottage, right down the end of a little laneway, right in the middle of greenery, right down, you would never find it otherwise. But MapQuest did it, anyway, or the English version, they have a different name for it. So I come in, and this is the big shocker.
Did you rent a car, or did you?
No, everything, the air miles were a gift, right? I stayed with friends, you know, this is all beyond the money thing, this is all gratitude. So I was sustained by the love of other people, and I didn't exploit it, but I enjoyed their company, and I wanted to thank them for the kindness they did many, many years ago. So this is the true story. Come in, and he's so generous and gregarious. He's sitting there, and if you ever see a picture of John Downes from Gonzo, I urge you to look at the blog, you'll see he's a big, hairy person, and I find out he can't move. His hands no longer work, his legs no longer work. He's sitting there in a seat with a dog closest to him, and he's dictating everything to a person who's helping. And that's how Gonzo comes out. I did not know that. So what do? I improvise like I'm improvising now. And I did that for about 3/4 of an hour, doing a love poem to his dog, because the dog is his source of life. And you know, the dog responded beautifully, they could hear. And to him, and he said, you made me cry. I said, keep crying. Robots can't cry. So he was crying, and I was grateful, because I wanted to get the third part done, but it was ain't possible to do Glastonbury and Devon in one day. By that time it was 7 o'clock, and I wanted to get down to a little town in Cornwall called Fowey. I've been to Fowey before because of my friend David Stringer, who was a folk singer in the 1970s, and who was an activist and an environmentalist long before that word was popular parlance. And he died last year. Now his widow, Pam, is unable to deal with the grief. So I tried so hard to get to her birthday party, which she was holding at the Fowey Hotel, and she had booked a Cornish tea for us all to welcome Sandy to play Native American flute, Wendy to do poetry, because Wendy wrote a lot more than me while we were out there, and me. But as life turned out, transport in England is almost impossible. There's only one road into Cornwall, that's the A30. And the road to Fowey is just a tiny little track. It's
down by the sea, of course, and I'd been there and stayed with her before, but I really wanted to be with her on her birthday, Gemini person, because of the extraordinary nature of her and her lover, who is now gone. If ever you want, I can dig up from the past archives the rainbow words that we used to get together. He'd put out anthologies of anyone's poetry online, right? Anyone. He'd also put out all this stuff about the environment and what to do about it. But there's no one to replace unique people. He's gone. Now there's a poet called Livia Nadu. Livia is in Latvia, and she was often published by David Extreme. Now Pam Stringer can't publish anything because she's still in grief. I wanted to be with her to thank her, to assuage the grief. So I missed her birthday, and this third time I got 2 adventures done. That's Glastonbury and Devon, but I didn't get to the other one because Chris was performing that night as part of the Georgian festival, because he was a Morris dancer. You know what Morris dancing is? Okay, it's a village form dance that goes back about 400 or 500 years. Everything's old, right? They use sticks and they dress up with, like, they wanted to fight and made fun of it, but they dress up with sticks and they hit the sticks at each other and have a wonderful time. It's really crazy. So that's wild, eccentric. So I didn't get to Bowie, I did get to Devon, did get to Glastonbury, and then I did the shows in Cornwall, and then there was the third leg after Cornwall, which was, of course, Yorkshire. Yorkshire has always been kind to me. I was a writer in residence in the Yorkshire libraries, and I was a writer in residence in Wales. And the poets there complained because, why is there an Australian doing poetry in Wales? Don't we have enough poets? And I said, don't you know that Dylan Thomas couldn't speak Welsh? Oh, okay. But, you know, they don't know. People don't know. Anyway, I'm there in Yorkshire. I was in Redruth in Cornwall. I was in Bradford. Now, Bradford is the capital of culture for Europe for this year. And just before I left, they were going to have this incredible festival of culture. And it has, I mean, Bradford is cosmopolitan, multicultural. You see people in saris walking down the street. You have people in hijabs and things like that. And they used to have a race ride every 10 years. All the yobbos and the racists go, we burn to the ground. But now it's pretty chill. And 3 of the, well, I couldn't walk. So I found a Magic Cafe. And the owner of the Magic Cafe was a refugee from Baghdad. She was born in Baghdad. And then when Baghdad became involved in the war of Iraq-Iran, she moved to Qatar. And when Qatar became involved in revolutionary activity, she moved to England. And she's there in the centre of culture in Europe, in Bradford, with this cafe called Joseph K. Now, who's that named after, Joe? Joseph K. Who's Joseph K? Come on, The Trial, Metamorphosis. Think about authors. Okay, it's Kafka.
Oh.
So Kafka is, they have his writings written in the glass of the window. They have the place open, like this is open. It's open for poets and musicians and everyone. It's completely lovely. And the 3 people are this. You have the mirror, a person, refugee from 2 places. You have an Irish woman who speaks Gaelic, right? Speaks Gaelic. Now my host up there was Bruce Barnes and Joy Barnes, who are both folk singers, like you are, and really talented people like they are, but very humble and very nice. So he speaks a bit of Gaelic, and they were speaking in Gaelic when I was there. Now in my ancestral background, I'm Irish and French, so I was listening to the music, and it was pretty wonderful to be exposed to the living language where they're talking to each other and understanding each other. So she's there, her name is Liz. And then you have this young person, 26, who's at Bradley University, and she's a poet, and she's very shy, and I keep asking people, bring out your poetry, trust me, I'm not going to criticize her. So she finally does. And her poetry is all about self-empowerment. And I think this is really, really good. Really wonderful.
Technical self-empowerment or?
No, about how you need to embrace your own, trust your own ability to be in this world. Right? Not rely so much on the past or any other authority. So So those are the three magic people. And this is what happened, and I cannot make this up. My videos, I'd send over videos to them because they have a thing called a big screen. In the middle of Bradford, all these incredible theatres and that from the 19th century. They have an author called J.B. Priestley, you ever heard of him? They have a statue to him right there. And they have the big screen in the middle of the city. And my videos of our venues, like Kick Butt and Malvern Books, were up there on the screen.
Nice.
Because it took a lot of sending more and more and more till they finally realised, oh, it's going moving on. Anyway, they were also on rotation inside the Magic Cafe. So I was looking up and there I was. So I've got photographs of me on there watching me on here, right? So it was, and they put up all the t-shirts. They had what's called the Old Fogies reunion. And the Old Fogies were from the poets from the 90s who came to Austin when I was running the Poetry Festival. And they enjoyed it so much, they wanted to come back, but life doesn't allow much. A couple came back a few times. My friend Alex Brzezinski, she came back to the Reiki Master. She set up an art gallery and things like that. But they had the t-shirts from the Poetry Festival up on the wall because it was the best thing that ever happened. Leaving Bradford, which is very incestuously small, and coming to Austin, which is self-referential at all times. Let's just talk about ourselves. So that was really good, the Old Fogies reunion, and I did poetry and art gallery, I did poetry blah 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 in Magic Cafe, and then they surprised me. They come and say, Liz brings this big cake shaped like a book, right? Happy birthday, Tommy.
Wow.
Nice.
Now it's so big, this cake is so beautiful, it took me 5 readings to give it to everyone. Because everybody loves cake. I love cake, but I couldn't afford it so big. But it's such an extraordinary thing, we've never met before. And let me tell you about Liz. I was doing the poetry and she starts crying. So I said, oh look, I apologise if I said anything to her. She said, no, you're touching my heart. And I thought, oh, that's so wonderful. And for real. So there was also in Cornwall a magic woman called Rosie. This is from the first festival I was taken to in Cornwall, where an historic mansion was also the place for a people's carnival. And it was extraordinary. They had steam engines and old cars and punch and beauty shows, all the old style English Cornish things, Cornish pasties. And a band singing in Cornish and everyone doing Cornish dancing. Everyone. They knew exactly what steps to do. So that's Rosie. But up in Bradford, it was Mira and Liz and I forget the student's name. There are photographs to prove all this happened, but it was going too fast to document for anyone else. Just to experience this uniqueness made it all worthwhile. So what happens is I'm doing these readings and workshops and all these things in Bradford, and suddenly money goes. So I think to myself, I could keep doing this till the end of June, as was my intention, but I don't want to die to prove to be free. So I immediately got a ticket, the last first-class ticket on the train down to Paddington, to King's Cross station to go to Paddington. I had to go from King's Cross to Paddington. Now, when I first came, I didn't tell you that my MRs were given to me by the person who used to run the Temple Live Poets, which is still going on soon. And this was 30 years ago. So all of this stuff happened many before we ever met. And that's why I want to honour them, because to me, anyone still living now has definitely got a function to fulfill. So Joy had given me the MR so I could thank the people. Now she loves England with all her heart. She goes whenever she can. She gets a contract, she gets paid a lot of money, so she goes to England. She takes tours to England. She tries to tell people how the Blessed Isles are the source of so many of our second-hand traditions. They're the original places where mythology began. Glastonbury, original. London, original, amazing. Called Londinium by the Romans, by the way. But the Romans never got to Cornwall. That's why Cornwall's got its own language, its own culture. And one day we'll be independent, like Scotland, the British.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I'm on the train, last ticket left, first class to King's Cross. And what is there? This little old lady she sees the fact that I can barely walk, right? I've got this cane, and there's a story about that too. I'm hobbling, trying to get down. So she goes and gets food and drink, and I thank her, and we sit down, we talk. And you know how people are magical underneath it all? If you just scrape the surface of fear, suddenly find a wellspring of incredible things to say. Anyway, she looks at me with clear eyes. She says, my daughter works to monitor nuclear weapons. The Russians don't know that we're tracking all their nuclear weapons. We know where they are at all times. I can't tell you more because the Official Secrets Act, and I say what a wonderful thing to do because none of us want to die and the Russians don't seem to get that memo. So we have this beautiful conversation all the way to King's Cross, and I can't remember her name, but she was magical. Anyway, I get to King's Cross and we're supposed to meet Joy there at the beginning with Joy, right, and Sandy, and at the end we're to meet Joy, but we get lost. King's Cross is very, very full of people, and very hard to find a place where you can meet someone. So eventually we do, and I say, look, I love you, but I'm in pain. I gotta get back to Austin. I'm gonna stay at the airport all night long. And Joy said, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're coming with me to our hotel room right now, and we're going to kidnap you. And I said, kidnap me? Okay, I can't do anything about that. So kidnap me in this London cab. You ever been in a London cab? It's like an experience. It's just like the 19th century Charles Dickens. They got these big hackney cabs, and you have to stand in line with 40 other people because it's very popular and very expensive. But we're going through London in the cab, and it's sort of like we go past the Bloomsbury Group, we go past the Royal Albert Hall, we go past King's Cross, we go past all these magical things from Charles Dickens' time, right? Until we get to her hotel, and I'm so excited, I drag my stuff out, and I forget my cane. So somewhere out there is someone with my cane, and those other cabbies are pirates, and they know they've got my cane, and they ain't going to return it, they don't care. But here's the second part of the story, right? I said to her, look, I'm going to stay in the airport, I leave in the morning, the earliest flight can get out, and she said, no, we're going to kidnap you. So I said, well, how am I going to get from where you are to where I have to get? Which is Heathrow, right? And she said, I'm going to get you a cab, a London cab. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, she gets a London cab to come in, and they're not allowed to go more than 20 miles an hour now. London. I used to drive illegally in the city before the 200 cameras were around. This is 30 years ago. I drive at really big speeds right throughout London and up and down the M1 to Cornwall. But that was a long time ago, and you can't do that now. So the cabs are limited to 20 miles an hour, and you couldn't go far anyway. It's circle round, it's traffic. But 5 o'clock, it's enough to get me there. And then I get out, I have a cheerful conversation with the guy, and I get out and I'm paying £16. And what I didn't know was this, Joy had already paid. So London taxi drivers are pirates and crooks and criminals. One's got my cane and the other's got paid twice. So then I get on.
The $100 wasn't to a cabbie?
What?
The $100 that got traded for
No, nothing to do with dollars. This is all pounds, cash money. And so I get to the airport, and then I'm blessed by other people's kindness because I can't walk. Right, my knee's gone. So they put me in a wheelchair.
yeah.
And they wheel me between the terminals after the plane, and they wheel me onto the plane. And when I got off the plane, they wheel me down the luggage area. And the thing about this is, I don't know if you know this, but when you're in a wheelchair, you go past all the lines. All the lines. I'm what? I can't believe this. 150 way to get through customs and everything like that. Whee! Wheeling man. I'm feeling like a 100-year-old man. Whoa, I'm great. And this is all due to the kindness of people. And I want to tell you, it's called a gratitude tour. And I decided to extend it indefinitely, starting right here and right now. What Joe said, why start when there's no one here? I forgot to tell him the air is conscious. I forgot to tell him the air is listening. And the air is only one of the elements here. There's also the water inside us and around us that we drink from for inspiration. There's also the very earth beneath us, which is sentient. And it is tolerant, because tolerating our boots upon her face at all times. And when we depart, our ashes and bones will be hidden within Mother Earth. But even so, we don't need to die, because that's such a waste of time and space. And there's also, of course, the fulmination, like you were burning that thing. I'm not one for fire. I don't trust fire. Fire can keep you warm, but it can burn you to the bones. I always say, give me air and water. I'm an air sign. I want to be part of what sustains me, not what destroys me. Now people talk about the Second Amendment and their right to have guns. I'd rather the First Amendment for the right to have speech, assembly, and to be together safely. Safely limitless, he says, and I agree with everything he says. The bottom line is, we need to make sure that we're both harmless and of benefit to other people, because otherwise what's the point of being in a time and space as precious as a gift to us? It'll never come again. Quite uniquely this, that we are song and chorus, where the lines of a poem that has not yet been written and the air is welcoming us, saying, yeah, release those flags of words into the wind and watch them fly like kites into the sky of blue-eyed wonder. And you say to yourself, well, I'm part of this. I'm a part of this. I'm not apart from this. I'm part of the trees out there, the sky up there, the clouds out there. The fact that sooner or later it's going to rain out here. But right now it's shade out here. Part of the here and now, and the yes and the you and the I and the we. Whatever personal pronouns you choose, you see, we are continuous community, continuously co-creating, continuously making, sharing, communing, reaching out and touching the air around us and blessing and consecrating by our presence everything that is, was, and ever will be. And even this sacramental thing is just a limited understanding of what truly is, because what was before us will never be again, and what comes after us is unknown to us. So here and now, why not bless us, bless every one of us, as Tiny Tim said, God bless us all, everyone.